I'm a CEO and co-founder of a company called Oro Inc. And before that, I co-founded a company called Magento. I hope there's not a lot of people here, so I hope some of you know what Magento is. And I know this is the tech track, so I'm not going to show any code today, but I am going to talk about the experience of working with open source and building Magento, which is an open source e-commerce platform. Anybody knows Magento? Let's ask anyway. I know the Akineo guys know. Anybody else? No? So Magento is an open source e-commerce platform. It was created by a company called Varian at the time, which I'll talk about, and it was released in 2008 as a stable, and ever since it has probably one of the biggest market shares when it comes to e-commerce platforms. About 30% of the market is using, online stores use Magento as their technology. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we came about to build that and why we did that. And just wanted to share with you this journey that we had. And this is a picture. I know it's a very bad quality and you probably can't see much, but this is a picture that I took while I was on the road in Ukraine. We have a lot of developers in Ukraine. I'm from Los Angeles, but our developers are in the Ukraine. And we were traveling between two offices there, between two cities. And it was after a big, big winter, and the road disappeared. And there was no road. We actually on the shoulders of the road. That's the only place we could ride. And sometimes it felt like that when we were on the journey of creating Magento. It felt like there's too many obstacles. It's not going to be fast moving. But sometimes it felt like this. It felt like we're on the freeway, highway to success, and nothing can stop us. This is a real picture taken on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. It's one of the busiest freeways in the world. And we had something called Carmageddon. It's when they had to block the freeway for 24 hours for some construction. And a lot of people jumped on the freeway, did a few crazy things. This is one of them. It's a real picture. You can Google more if you want to see what people were doing during Carmageddon. This is how the 405 looks almost every day, other day, right? And sometimes it felt the same to us. It felt we cannot move fast enough. Most of the time, it felt like driving a Porsche 300 kilometers an hour on the Autobahn. I did that too, but that's a different story, different talk. We can talk about it if you want later. So let's start from the beginning. You know, if you want to start a company, if you want to start a new project, where should you start? And I went to a site that talked about travel, and I wanted to see what they say. And the first thing they said was choose a travel partner. And when I read through these points, a lot of these points are very applicable for starting your new business or starting your new project. And they say like, seek a travel partner that share common interest. And that kind of sounds obvious when you go on a trip, but it's very, very applicable when you start a business or a project because you want people that have the same interests, same enthusiasm about the same products that you're working on, because that will just help you get better at that. Discuss your trip budget. So again, if you're on a trip and you have one travel partner has $100 and another one that has $10,000 in their pockets, it's not usually going to end up well because one is going to run out of money faster than the other. When you have a business, it's the same thing. Because if you're not aligned on the financial, one partner might start wanting to get money out of the project fast, another one will say, I'm good to go for a few more years. So you have to be aligned on the budgets as well. Then they say review your ideal itinerary, right? Check at what point you want to be where. And that's, again, the same thing when you have a company. Because if you have two partners, for example, one wants to retire after 2 years, another one wants to build a company for 70 years and retire when he's 80, you have to be aligned on that. Try each other. Travel on short excursions first. Again, if you work together, you get used to each other's quirks. You'll get better at doing stuff together. And this is a bit outdated, but locate potential travel partners online. I guess today it's kind of obvious. But I work with a lot of startups. I talk to a lot of startups, and there's always a backstory, how people got together, why they started something together. So it's always something to tell. I was very fortunate to have a partner at Magento. His name was Roy Rubin. He was the co-founder and former CEO of Magento. And we actually met while we were attending UCLA. I was a computer science. He was an economics major. And we were introduced through a mutual friend, and he said, you know, Roy has this small business. He's working from his bedroom, creating websites. Why don't you kind of start working together, helping develop? And I was like, you know, I'm studying computer science. All this HTML stuff, that's not interesting, right? I want to do artificial intelligence. That's what I was majoring in. So I said, nah, I'll pass. A year later, you know, the economy wasn't that good. I had to find a job, and we met again, and we started working together. So you never know how the path is going to end up. We actually started, we rented this closet, a maintenance closet. So it's a small, very small room, about 2 meters by 2 meters together, and it was in this design company that we were building websites for. So we were sitting almost back to back, and if a customer had to come in, one of us had to go out because there was no room for more than 2 people. The second thing I had to get used to, that even though Roy was sitting with his back to me, he was only instant messaging me. He never talked to me. So it was complete silence in this room. Anyway, we started working together. We renamed the company to Varian. That was the original company that we created in 2004. And we started doing a lot of different projects. What we were doing was anything that somebody asked us to do that had to do with web development. So a lot of people asked us to do custom CMS, content management systems, community websites. Before Facebook, every company, every person thought they have to have their own community. So we were doing a lot of these custom community websites. And then we even built some intranet that dealt with giving loans to people, making it very efficient to give loans to people that want to buy homes. This is 2004, and we made it very, very easy for people to buy more homes. Guess what happened in 2008? It crashed, right? So some people blame us for that. We don't take full responsibility, but we created this intranet that helped doing that. So we started doing these projects, and we had this phrase that people asked us, can you do this, can you do that? And we always said, yes, we can, right? Obama said it, but we said that much earlier. We said, yes, we can. The reason that we could say always yes was because we were using open source technologies. So we were very unrestricted with what we could do with these technologies. We had the source code, we were able to adjust it, extend it, build whatever people asked us to do. And that actually made it extremely easy for us to compete, because not only did we were able to get all the features that people wanted, we also were able to be very competitive on the cost, because we had no licensing costs. So when we would come to and answer some RFQ or a request for proposal or anything like that, we were always cheaper because we had no licensing cost. We were using open source technologies. So I mentioned open source, and so just in case you don't know what open source is some kind of philosophy. And I'm not a philosopher, so we're not going to go over this, don't worry. But just to highlight, open source means I share with you how I do something, right? I'm going to completely share with you how I build something. And when it comes to open source technology or software, it means that I give you the source code. The source code is open, you see how I do it, it's completely transparent to you, and you can take it and adopt it. And that's the second thing. If it's not only good enough to give you the source code, it's also about the ability for you to reuse it, extend it, and actually build on top of that. And that's very, very important in open source. And again, back in that time, in 2004, there was this misconcept about open source. A lot of people that wanted to use open source kind of assumed that it's free. If I'm getting the source code free, everything is free. And I know it sounds funny, but we got people contacting us at Varian and asking, can you build this project for us using this open source tool? And we said, yeah, sure, we can do that. Yeah, that's what we always said. And then they said, okay, so start. And then we said, sure, this is the estimate, 50 hours, this is our hourly rate, this is how much it's going to cost. And they're like, whoa, what are you talking about? Aren't you these geeks sitting and just building this free software all day long? And we said, yeah, but we need to pay the rent, right? We need to have beers at night. So they were extremely surprised that we want to make money off open source technologies. I think that this already is a bit less common today. I think people understand that open source, in the end, somehow costs you money. If you're going to invest your own time learning it, that's an opportunity cost, right? If you're going to pay somebody else to do it, you should still host it. So open source is not necessarily free. But open source has one thing that people kind of ignore. It has the only kind of way of developing software that has no vendor lock-in. You're not locked into one vendor. Because it's open source, because the source code is available to anybody that wants to work on it, anybody can pick it up. So if you choose one vendor, you don't like them, you can choose somebody else, you can go in-house, create your own team to work on something. So no vendor lock-in. It's always a winning combination. And the most famous kind of stack when it comes to open source is called the LAMP stack. For us, P was PHP. Others use Python and others. And we really didn't think about the reason that we're using open source. It was free, it was available, but it worked. More important than everything, it worked, and it outperformed a lot of the closed source solutions back in the time. So we got quality, it didn't cost us much, and it worked. So we were using it. A quick story, moving a bit further in this journey, Xerox was very interested in using Magento, and they came to our office. We had a very small office still, And they came about 20 people from Xerox. You know Xerox? People still know what Xerox is? Yeah. So 20 people came to our office, started walking in. It took about 20 minutes to get them all in. We couldn't even sit them in our conference room because it was too small. So we had this area for them. Then we went through another 20 minutes of introductions. Everybody had to say what their title is, right? And then we started giving them the pitch about Magento. And we said, well, this is Magento. It's an e-commerce platform, and it's open source. And they, whoa. Open source? Xerox doesn't do open source. They all got up, left the building. Okay, so that was interesting for us. The next day, they called us and said, you know what? It turns out we do use open source. Most of the Xerox products actually were developed using Unix or Linux, which is open source. So we rescheduled and we'll get back to Xerox again. So again, open source worked for us and we were able to do a lot with that. 2004, 2005, a lot of companies started wanting to go online, sell online or e-commerce. And we got a lot of requests for that, so we looked around. We found this project called OSCommerce, and it was actually a project that was created in 2000 by a person by the name of Harold Ponce de Leon, and it was a true community project, kind of what you would expect from an open source project to be. There was really no commercial entity behind that, and we started using it. It did most of what we needed, and we started extending it more and more. And the problem for us was that we started getting more and more complex projects on top of it. And we started to try and connect with the community of OSCommerce, see if they can help us, see when is the next version coming up. We found some bugs, we try to contribute them back and see when they will be incorporated into the next version. And it was very hard, it was very difficult to work with them because it was one person in there running the show in a very kind of dogmatic way. He didn't want to share much, and he used a lot of drama. He used to fire the communities and create a new community, and it was like too much things going on for us because we were trying to create a business around his software. So then, like many other companies, we ended up having a fork of OSCommerce because we kept on adding to it and improving here and fixing there. So we ended up owning this fork because we were already so far away from this project. So like many other companies, and on any journey that you'll take, you'll hit a crossroad, right? You have to choose a path. What's the next direction to do? And I was the CTO, so I looked around and said, okay, can we find something else to use instead of OSCommerce? And there was nothing there, right? So like other services company, we were a services company creating custom projects on top of that. A lot of companies just created their own. And we decided, okay, we have good developers right now. We can start working on our own e-commerce platform for our use. We'll develop on it, we'll create services for our customers, and then allow us to sell more services on that. Since we know what we're doing, we'll control it, etc. And then for this kind of almost unknown reason, I walked into Roy's office, my partner, and I told him, how about if we release it as an open source project, right? And then I used this famous phrase of, what's the worst that can happen, right? And if you think about it, what's the worst that could have happened to our company? We were not a product company. We were making money creating services and custom projects for our customers. If we would put our software out there for free, it didn't make any difference to us, right? The worst that could happen is that maybe other people would try it out, maybe other people would like it, maybe we would get some feedback, maybe they would even help us to make it better, right? So we said, sure, let's just put it out to the world. If somebody wants to use it, let them use it. It's not a problem. So we decided, open source it is, and we decided to start working on that. So 2006, we actually made this decision, but we had kind of an arrangement, and we made a deal between me and Roy that we're going to work 8 hours a day on paying projects, so working with our current customers and generating revenue for the company, and the rest of the time, and you're probably really good at math, that means 16 hours plus weekends, work on Magento, right? So we had all this extra time to work on Magento, but we didn't mind because it's something we really enjoyed doing. We were very enthusiastic about it, so we kind of worked through the night and weekends to create Magento. And we started with a very small team, 3 developers and myself, so a total of 4 people. Started it for a few months, got pretty fast somewhere. And by 2007, we kind of committed that we are going to release the first beta version of the product on the 31st of August 2007. Now, we started having this following. People started following what we were doing. Put it out there that we were going to build this project, and people started following. Now, we knew how to negotiate timeline with customers. We never talked to this huge group of people that want to know when our product is going to be released. So we just said 31st of August, sounds like a good date. So we actually did good. We finished everything we wanted to do for the first beta release of the product, and then we were kind of getting ready to release it, but we did what we call a rookie mistake or a beginner's mistake, and we moved to a new office the same week as this release, okay, that we scheduled it. So what happens? I'll tell you what happens. The internet service provider went down when we were just about to click the submit button to release the packages that we already had ready for Magento. And now people in Australia started letting us know on our forums, and we were reading it on our phones, that it's already almost 1st of September in Australia, and we should get our asses moving and starting to release because we promised and committed 31st of August. Sure enough, internet service came back up a few hours later. We were able to release it because our time zone is Los Angeles, right? So we're behind everybody. So if anybody asks me, I always say Los Angeles is one of the best places to have a startup. You get a lot more hours during the day to stand with your deadline. So Hawaii is a bit better, but you can choose. So we continued working on it. We actually used our service developers, and we were rotating them a bit. So we would use them to build some features and teach them how to work with Magento. And that's how we got this training and developing Magento at the same time for our team. And eventually, we released the product in March of 2008, the first stable product. And when I was leaving eBay, by the way, acquired us. And when I was leaving eBay shortly after the acquisition, I found this page. It's very hard to see from where you're sitting. I know that. It's online if you really want to see it. But what this is was the original project plan of Magento. And what we were able to achieve with 3 developers and myself, I think is amazing. Because when I saw it, I couldn't believe that about 80 to 90% of it we managed to fit in on the time that we promised everybody. And again, this is working overtime. I should have kept it, framed it in my office today. And every time I have argument with developers, we can't do it, it's not enough time, just point to this and what is achievable. So unfortunately, I threw it out. So I said we started getting this following. People started liking what we're doing. Again, it wasn't our intent. We just wanted to build a product for ourselves, but we put it out there for the world to see. And we got about 25,000 community members before we released even a single line of code of Magento. So people didn't even know what we were doing, but they started saying, we need that as well. We're looking for an e-commerce platform. Now, if you're sitting in a room, closed room, no windows, you don't want to show anybody what you're doing because you're afraid that they will copy what you're doing, right? Which is how closed source works. Nobody knows about what you're doing. By us just talking about, we were very visible, we were very transparent. We were just saying, hey, we're working on this new product because we need an e-commerce product. If you're interested, it's going to be open source. And we started talking about it. And people from all over the world started joining our community. Like I said, we didn't even show them what we're doing. We just talked about it. 25,000 people started joining. Now, if you get 25,000 people that are interested in what you're doing, as a product manager, and I was the product manager for this, that's a really good validation of what you're working on, right? Again, if you're in this closed room working on your own, not sharing anything, you're kind of guessing. Maybe by the time you release, ta-da, I'm ready, nobody's interested. We knew that people are interested before we released. And that allowed us to kind of change a little bit of the tactics and think about it and say, well, maybe we shouldn't just do it for ourselves. Maybe we really should focus on doing it as a product, something that other people will use. And that really is helpful as a product owner, right? And not only that, I designed Magento to be a US-based product, to fit the US market, US needs. That's what we knew. Most of our customers were from the United States. So we knew what they needed in terms of e-commerce. We didn't really know what people in Europe or Asia or South America needed. But by having 25,000 people join us, we started looking at the data and seeing who these people are. And we noticed that almost 50% of the community members actually came from Europe, from Germany, France, UK, Netherlands. And that, again, made us think, maybe we're doing something wrong. Maybe by having this approach that we should just service the US-based market, we're going to ignore all these European users. So we shifted our thought, and almost overnight or during a week, we actually added a lot of support for what these community members from Europe actually asked us to have. For example, VAT support, display prices in multiple ways. So we adjusted the product to fit a bit more globally, and that helped us a lot with adoption. Again, closed source, you don't know who's using it. Open source, people were telling us what they needed. They were sharing with us what they were asking for. And that was really a great help to do that. Then when it came to features, they told us what features they liked. They told us what features they don't like. When we started sharing with them and releasing the product, they gave us immediate feedback. They told us, oh, there's a bug here, improvement there. There's a security issue you should fix. So that's really, really good open product management. It doesn't always work, however. Sometimes one company reached out to us and said, we love what you're doing. We saw that on your roadmap you have support for web services, and we want to contribute that. And we said, well, that's great. We trained them. We worked with them for a long time. Just that we found out that the week before we were supposed to release our 1.0, that they disappeared. They didn't give us anything, and we ended up releasing Magento 1.0 with no web services support, which is a really, really bad thing because we committed to having that. So we kind of adjusted our thought, and we said, okay, Varian, our company, will be responsible for the core features. If you want to extend the product, build extensions. If you want to contribute, you can contribute bugs, but not features. Features that are in the core product will be our responsibility. Everything else you can do through extensions, and that's what we did. And the last thing I want to say about this is that the tactic of release soon, release often, especially if you have such a good user base that's reporting to you any issues, is a really good approach because not only you get feedback immediately, but you also are able to adjust your priorities. So if you go like, I'm planning the next year versus I'm planning the next month, in the next month, a lot of technology, new technology is appearing, you can readjust your priorities. And that's what we did. And Magento was one of the first platforms to offer out of the box a lot of the new technology. For example, it's not so new today, but check out Google Checkout Level 2, Checkout by Amazon, Google Website Optimizer, canonical URLs, all these things that we were able to, as soon as they came out on the market, within weeks, we already had support for them in the platform. So again, that's really a good thing. And we talked about managing open product management, but when you're like a politician, right, you stand in front of all of these people, and you're trying to convince them, hey, that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm for. Each and every one individual in this crowd has their own opinion, their own agenda, right? And they're trying to scream at you and say, oh, do this first, do that first. And how do you actually take all that noise, right, and make sense of it as this open product management? So I was doing something, but I was feeling very guilty about it. I'll tell you in a sec what I was doing. Until I met Amazon's CTO, and I had lunch with him in Amsterdam. And I asked him, look, you probably have even more noise than I have. You have all these users and with Amazon Web Services and all that. So how do you manage it? And he told me what he does, and it was very similar to what I do, and I'll share it with you now because I think it's a very good way of doing it. So basically, it's very simple. The first time you hear something, you just ignore it. It's noise. The second time you hear something, you kind of register. Maybe that's something that's actually important to do. And the third time, you actually take complete note and you dive deep. And that allows you to minimize so much of these one-time requests of people that are just trying to pull you to directions that you should not be going. And that's very, very helpful. The last thing, again, if you're standing in front of such a crowd, you're very exposed, right? People see what you do, they know what you do. And we used to call it doing your laundry in public, right? Your dirty laundry, you're sharing with the rest of the world. But sometimes that's a good thing because one troll, like internet troll, started blaming Magento for stealing customer data. They said, if you're using Magento, Varian is stealing all your customer data. So don't use Magento. And then what happened was that we didn't even have to answer that. The community looked at the code, right? It was completely open, completely transparent. They looked at it and said, no, there's no way that data is being stolen. So that thing went away on its own. We didn't even have to get involved. Community took care of that. So you travel, you have a group of travelers, you hit the fork in the road, and sometimes people split, right? One people goes left, some people go right. In open source, a fork is something that is usually followed by a lot of drama because the community is getting anxious. They're like, which side, which way should we go? Why is there a fork? What happened? Is the original vendor disappearing? Is there a problem? So a lot of drama when it comes to forking in open source. And what it means is that a group of people in the community decide to take the version that exists and recreate it on their own. And that usually kind of splits the community in the middle, and you really want to avoid that if possible. But my argument is that a fork is not a bad thing. A fork is actually a really, really good thing because that means that you were ignoring something that the community decided that has to be in your product, right? And you were ignoring it. But if they are so enthusiastic about it to the point where they want to create their own fork and start supporting their own version, maybe you should look into what they're doing and adopt it back to your product, right? So my argument is a fork is a good thing. It teaches you that you were ignoring something that had to be done. And Magento was at least tried to be forked many, many times. But every time, we were very attentive to what was going on. If there's a real reason for the fork, we were able to actually adopt what was happening there and put it into our product. So make a nasty fork a good fork for you and make it work for your product. When you travel, sometimes people start liking what you're doing, right? They start joining you, your group becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And in open source, that's called a community, right? And an open source project cannot exist without a good community. The Magento community was one of the best communities I know. It was extremely enthusiastic. It's a bit hard again to see, but everything that the community was doing for us was actually promoting our product. I remember that 31st of August when somebody was waiting in Australia for us to release, he actually started typing on our forum, go Magento, like trying to make us go faster. And from there on, it became a slogan for Magento. People all over the world use this term, go Magento. They created this M sign, like they were doing for Magento, and they would greet each other when they would meet and stuff. So it became like a trend. People were taking the logo of Magento, wearing it, and taking it to all these exotic places and doing extreme stuff with it just to show their passion for the product. And that was giving us energy. Seeing how people are enthusiastic about what we're doing gave us energy to work harder, understand the people using it, and make sure that we work and try to deliver the best we can. Me and Roy, shortly after we released the 1.0 of Magento, were invited to give the keynote at the Zend conference. Zend is the PHP company, if you know it. They just got acquired, but we were invited to give the keynote. And it's a pretty big conference, about 1,000 to 1,200 people that show up there, and we were doing the keynote, finished the keynote, and then we got off the stage and we kind of talked to each other and said, you know, maybe we should have an event for Magento. When can we have our own event? And then we kind of looked around and said, wow, that's a lot of people coming to an event. And, you know, for Magento, maybe people are not going to be interested. Maybe in 5 years or so, we can start thinking about it again. Less than 5 months later, we were in Germany in the first community Magento event called Meet Magento, and there was a few hundred people there. It was a completely professional event run by our community. We just had to show up. And then more and more of these events started happening in Bergento here in France, Swissgento in Switzerland. And all over the world, people were doing these events, and all we had to do again is show up. We were the small company from LA, but people all over the world created these events that were promoting our product, promoting their services around our product, and we just had to show up to join it. That was a great experience. So how did we actually introduce Magento to the world? So we just put it out there, right? That was one thing. But then we started getting all this traction and a lot of hype about our product. So we got invited to this event called Twist Up in LA, and it was in January 15, 2008, just before we released our first stable version. And this event is for startups. We were not a startup, we were a business, we were a profitable business actually, but we were invited and we said, let's go and see. Let's see what the investors say about our product. Let's see what the VCs, venture capitalists, think about what we're doing. So we went there, you basically set up in this circle, each company gets a small table, they set up their demo, and the VCs and investors walk around, get a demo, and tell you what they think about what you're doing. And if they really like it, then maybe we'll even invest in that. So we set it up, we started giving demos, and one by one the VCs came and the investors came and we gave them the demo. They loved what we did. They loved the design, they loved the features. They said e-commerce is the future. And then they asked us, okay, and how much are you going to charge for this? And we said, charge? We're a services company. This is open source. You go on our website, you download it, you install it, you use it. And this was their reaction, right? They're like, open source doesn't work. You are not seriously doing this product at this level and releasing it as open source. And we were like, oops, we did something wrong, right? So we went home that night. It was a very, very long night because we were like, oh my God, we're probably missing something. Why are we thinking this way? What's going on? Maybe we should rethink about this. Good thing happened is we woke up the next morning, and literally the next morning, this was the news. Sun acquired MySQL, open source database, for $1 billion, right? $1 billion. So open source does work, right? If you believe in this path, right, it does work. And you can imagine that all these guys that laughed at us the night before called us the next day saying, hey, maybe we should have coffee. Let's take you out for lunch and re-talk again about what we just talked about. So open source work. Believe in your path. Sometimes it does work. But this question of how are you going to make money started haunting us because we said, okay, we have all this potential. We're a services company. We make money from selling services. How do we continue investing in the product? Because we're taking more and more resources, investing in this product. How do we continue to not starve, right? And when you're in a trip, it's the same thing, right? You sometimes stay longer, you spend more money than you want, you start running out of money, and you start thinking, what can I do to continue sustaining what's happening? So we were a services company, and we said, okay, let's do services. And services are great. It's a great business. If you ever did services, You have one guy working, and you charge for 10 people, right? So it's a good business model if you want to do that. But because we were the vendor that was creating this product, services was not an option. It's not an option for the vendor that's creating the open source product to offer services or to scale the services to a big size company. And the problem is that we started creating this channel. A lot of other services companies that wanted to start giving services on Magento, on our product. And they were afraid that we will compete with them, that we are going to say, well, we'll keep the good project and give you all the ones that we don't want. So it created this kind of uncertainty in terms of our other channel partners. So services was not a good idea for us to scale our business. Okay, so then we thought, well, Magento is a mission-critical application and generates revenue for the companies that are using it. Maybe we'll start offering support, right? People will pay us a yearly subscription. They can open tickets. We'll fix their issues. Everybody's happy. Moreover, any support site that you'll go on, people are smiling. So if they're smiling, it's a good idea, right? Maybe we should do the same thing. Guess what? It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work in open source is because people that are using an open source product, right, are using it because it works. If it wouldn't work, they wouldn't use it. So they're already using it, and they find a bug. And usually the calls happen like this. Hi, is this Magento? Yes, this is Magento. I found a bug. Can you please fix it? Sure, we can fix it. Buy our subscription plan, open a ticket, we'll fix it, issue a patch for you, and release it in the next version. Here, are you ready to buy? And usually the answer is, wait, are you going to release it in the next version? Yes, we'll give you a patch, and oh, it's okay, I can wait. So nobody bought it. So it just doesn't work. Remember Xerox, they came to us? They came back the next day, or the next time we met with them, and they said, okay, we do open source. Tell us how much you want for it. And we said, it's free. It's open source, right? You do whatever you want with it. They said, whoa. Open source, I mean free, open source we do, but free we don't do. And the reason they don't do free was on a few levels. They started explaining to us, if you're not charging us money, we have no idea that you're going to stay around for a long time, right? Because if you have no kind of business model around making money off your product. Second, we want to make sure that you buy warranties, that you buy insurance against the fact that if we are going to be sued, they wanted us to indemnify them. That means that we are protecting them against any lawsuits on their software. So they said, we have to pay you. They literally told us, we cannot enter $0 value for software in our accounting system. It has to cost money. Okay, so if they have to pay us, maybe we'll build a model for that. And then we started looking around at other successful open source projects. And all of them have something in common. They offer their products under a dual licensing model. Means that they have a free open source community edition, and then they have a commercial licensed product, or as we called it, an enterprise edition. And that's what we did. And guess what? That works perfectly. It works because whoever doesn't want to pay you, they use your open source product, no strings attached. If they want to have a relationship with you and they want you to give them warranties and support, and then you can bundle support, they will pay for your product. This worked so well that we were not ready for how good it worked. We had one salesperson in our team. We had about 50, 60 developers at the time, but one salesperson. Roy, my partner, was the only sales guys that we had, and we had all this influx of requests to buy our product. We couldn't handle it. Luckily for us, his wife was on maternity leave, so she joined the team, and she started selling them, and she was selling so many of these, about 100 a month, 100 enterprise clients a month, and we were spending $0 on marketing. We were not putting AdWords, we were not promoting our product, we were not having commercials. It all happened organically from the community. Companies like Lenovo were using our free product for a year. As soon as they heard that we have a commercial product, called us and wanted to pay for it. 3M, kind of a big company, there was one guy there that created the Magento website for him and his wife for their business, home business. And he was sitting in a meeting at 3M where 3M said that our next strategy is to take all of the brands that 3M has online. How do we do it? And he raised his hand and said, I know a great product. It's called Magento. Got a call from 3M. We're ready to buy for 10 different brands that we have. We were just blown away from this response. And it worked great. By the way, Roy's wife was, when I left in 2012, was still responsible for about a third of the licenses we ever sold. So she worked really, really hard in those first few months. Magento started becoming famous. In the beginning, when you would Google the term Magento, Magento would say, did you mean Magneto, which is an evil X-Men superhero, right? Or evil hero, whatever you want to call it. But then we started like, playing around with stuff, and we started testing the trend of Magento versus e-commerce. And at one point, people were Googling Magento more than the term e-commerce. Again, it's not scientific or anything, but people started kind of associating Magento with e-commerce. Magento developers became something that people were looking for. And this is, again, a slide that was done by the community. I don't know if you can read it, but it's pretty good. Our developers, they call themselves organisms that takes coffee and creates software, right? So Magento developers became something. There was such a demand for Magento developers. This, again, I don't know if you can see or not, but the trends, every job site, if you were looking to what's the next technology to learn, you would pick up Magento because the demand for it was just growing and growing. So much so that when we met with a lot of developers all over the world, they were telling us how they became these mini success stories, right? Because they were all like creating this successful business around being a Magento developer. So it was extremely well. The problem with that was that because everybody wanted to do Magento, but not a lot of people spent the time to learn Magento. They thought, well, it's PHP, how hard can it be? I'll just hack it and start selling my services on Magento. But the problem with that is when you're part of something so big, this kind of ecosystem that's starting evolving around the product, you want to also offer quality. So spend the time to learn it, right? And with Magento, a lot of people just said, I do Magento, I'm an expert. We actually got a resume in 2007, when we didn't even release our stable version. I got a resume of a developer that wanted to work for us and said, I have 5 years experience of Magento. Magento was not out yet, but he had 5 years experience. So people were overselling themselves and not investing the time to learn the software. But if you do, it's just going to make you better as a developer. It's going to make the ecosystem better, because we got a lot of bad reputation for early days in Magento because people got very bad experience. Performance was bad, a lot of issues with bugs, and it was usually done by developers that were working on it. Some developers started building extensions. Remember, we said we want to give people the option not to contribute directly to the product, but build extensions, and we created this extension marketplace, and some developers became so successful, that's all they did was Magento extensions, selling them, did really, really good business. So much so that Roy one time wrote on a whiteboard in one of our conference rooms that we're in the business of leaving holes, right? And if we leave holes, gaps, people fill them, they find what to do with those holes, right? And that's what we did. We left kind of a lot of open opportunity for developers to create new features, new extension, what we call verticalize the product for different industries, et cetera. So people were doing it. And this was evolving into this ecosystem of people around our product. We had developers, we had system integrators, we had users, community, right? Everything evolved into this great ecosystem. So much so that Forrester actually evaluated this ecosystem to be $1 billion in revenues a year. Well, again, $1 billion, it's not funny, right? So we were kind of checking what's going on. I mean, we're investing in this ecosystem, right? We're partnering with the ecosystem, we're investing in the community, we're transparent, we keep everything, we tell everybody what we do. And the more we do that, the more successful the ecosystem is. But not only are the ecosystem is successful, the more successful they are, we were more successful. Right? So if they could be worth $1 billion, maybe we can be worth $1 billion, right? So we continued doing this, we continued investing in that, and it worked amazingly well. I just want to mention our team was amazing. We had this enthusiasm. When you would walk into any one of our offices, people loved what they were doing there. People really were happy to come to work. They were feeling like they were part of something that's growing, and that was a great experience to have. And so much so that eBay noticed us, and they decided that it's time to maybe acquire Magento. They invested in Magento. We had to close Varian down, created a company called Magento that was servicing the Magento product with eBay. And basically, we went on from there. So people ask me, so you did this great journey, what's some of the lessons? I talked to a lot of startups that ask me, how do we become a billion-dollar company? How do we create these huge products? And I say, it's not by setting off out of the start that this is going to be the best journey of your life. It's about saying, this is what I want to do. I'm doing it because I believe in what I'm doing. I believe there's a need for that. And that usually turns out to be successful. The second thing that I really didn't do is actually enjoy the trip, right? We say, smell the roses. Pick up your head from the keyboard, look around, and enjoy it, because it's usually a once in a lifetime opportunity, so just enjoy it. So I got to the destination, as people call it, when we sold Magento, and I actually had to leave due to a technicality with my contract in eBay. It's a different story, different talk. Everybody came and they created this T-shirt for me. It's two of a kind. There's only this one and one more with the black logo of Magento, because I was very opposed to the orange color that we were associated with, so they did that for me. I left eBay, unfortunately, like I said, was not even 40. I decided, okay, what's the next thing I'm going to do? First thing I did, literally the same day I left, I took my skateboard, went to the next skate park and said, maybe it's time to rebuild my skateboarding career, just to find out when you're getting close to 40 and your body doesn't heal the same way. So that was not a good idea. I did a lot of other crazy things. I actually came to a wedding here in France of two people that met in a Magento event, and they invited me because they believed that Magento brought them together. So we did that. And sometimes when you really feel that, it's retirement and that's it, that you get pulled back in. And fortunate for me, I created a new company today. Actually, I have really good people that work with me. These are people that work with me in Magento. We have a lot of the core developers. Jerry Carter was VP of Sales at Magento. Dima Soroka was my lead architect on the Magento project. Now he's my CTO. Roy Rubin, my partner from Magento, decided to come out from retirement and is on our advisory board. We're using the same playbook that we did with Magento, working on 3 different products, one of which is an Oro platform. It's a business application platform, general purpose. It's under MIT license, so you can actually adopt it and use whatever you want from it, be as creative as possible with it. And just it has a set of features that help you build business applications, so you don't have to redo everything from scratch every time. Some companies decided to actually build products on top of that and release them either under open source or not. Of course, we're using it for Oro CRM and Oro Commerce, 2 of our other products, but the Amanta Desk, TimeLab, Morello are using it. There's a company here that I'm also a co-founder of called Kineo. There are some of them are here. It's an open source product information management system here in Nantes. So great company. I really want you to meet them. They're over here if you want to talk to them and see what they do, if you want to work for them. Oro CRM, it's an open source CRM, client relation management, again, using the same playbook of Magento, dual licensing if you want to learn more about it. And our latest project, it's Oro Commerce, a B2B online commerce, so business selling to another business online, again, open source. And we're in beta 2 right now, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll release. So with that, I think we're out of time. Thank you very much. If you need to get in touch with me, my Twitter, Yoav Kutner, or yoav@oroinc.com. I don't know if we have time for questions or if there's any question. No. All right, so thank you very much.